Hello, welcome to Thrive After 40. Now, thank you for joining the programme, and I want to start by saying that my hope for you in sort of undertaking this 10-week programme is that over the course of the process, you're going to tap into a brand new source of motivation that's going to help you eat well, find space for exercise that you want to do, and find some habits that you can really make stick this time and stick with for life. And the key to that is finding some motivation, which is about a lot more than just wanting to lose weight. Now, I know many of you coming into programs like this may well have weight loss as a goal, and that's fine. But in my experience of working with women in this age group over the last 3 or 4 years, real change starts to come when you tap into something different to weight loss. And that's a genuine desire to start taking better care of yourself so that you're in better mental shape and better physical shape to just embrace your life. Okay. And, we all probably recognise that at this age, after 40, sort of going into perimenopause and menopause, we really start to can feel really tired and overworked. And I think part of that is it's not just a hormonal shift, but it's part of maybe the last 2 or 3 decades where our lives have gradually been taken over by work, by family, by friends, by social responsibilities, until we reach a point where we've just lost touch with who we are and what we even want from our lives. And I think, the menopause obviously sort of maybe changes the way we can cope and we can handle things, and we start to maybe crave some change. We want to get off the treadmill, we want to do something different, we want to start putting ourselves first. We might feel that now our children are getting older, we've got the time to do that, and we're thinking about, well, what's next for us? We've been in careers for 10, 20, 30 years and feel like we want to do something different. So there's lots of things that can really start to happen around this stage of your life that can really, propel us into something different and make us want to change. And we might not always know what that is, and that doesn't necessarily matter. But what I do believe is that it all starts with your health. Okay. So whatever the future is, and that's not going to be something that I'm going to answer for you here or in this program, but what's really important is making sure that you are in the right state and state of health and the frame of mind to actually embrace change and go after it. Because, if you think all the things that I talked about before, the way your life starts to catch up with you and maybe overtake you, that can leave people feeling tired, feeling low on energy, having mood swings, feeling like the joy's gone out of your life. We can get brain fog, overwhelm, anxiety. We don't sleep as well, and all those things can make everything in our lives really hard. And if you think about that as a status or how you might feel, plus maybe a bit of feeling like you're sort of over your job and looking for something different, change is hard when you're in a good state of mind. If you're feeling like that and you've got all those sorts of things going on that we typically have at this stage of life, well, I mean, really, you wonder how anyone can actually change at all, because you feel so depleted in terms of your energy levels and your ability to even think about what you want. How on earth, do you actually make any changes? How do you change? So, and I think what I have found in common with the women that I've worked with so far is that we have a sense that this is an age where we start to realise how important our health is, okay? And we know that it's important to start to look after ourselves more. We see that we're getting into our 50s and we're looking into our 60s and beyond, and life after children, life after work, potentially. And we want to keep living, we want to keep doing exciting things. So we know we want it. We sort of really feel that that's something that's important now. The real problem or the barrier is, against that backdrop that I've talked about, we don't actually know what to do or how to do it. And part of that comes from just not having maybe the mental capacity to do it or even the time. But also some of it is that we just don't know what works anymore, what we need to do. So we can just feel really overwhelmed. Why put what little energy we have into making some effort to make changes to our lifestyle if it's not going to work for us now? Okay, and that can be a barrier. So that's why it's acknowledging how hard this time of your life is, okay? But also, on the other flip side of that, it also is why we feel like we really need change. So it can be sort of starting to point us in that direction, okay, of change, which is why you're here, okay? And over the course of the next 10 weeks, I want to do everything I can to help you change your diet for good. Because again, we want to start breaking all those old dieting patterns that we've had, and help you maybe sort of fall in love with exercise again, or find some space for exercise in your life, okay? Now, to do that, we have to start to break old habits and patterns that we've created over the years, because a lot of us have dieted, or maybe we've never dieted, but we sort of see how our bodies are changing and we don't feel comfortable with that. And it's sort of taken us into the dieting world. And even if we've not been dieting when we've been younger, we've seen it, we've been immersed, we've lived in a culture where dieting is just prevalent, and all the messages around dieting is just everywhere. We couldn't have missed it. And some of the patterns that we sort of start to sort of default into at this time of our lives is trying to go without food, trying to skimp on portion sizes. It's almost like a badge of honour to not need to eat, and we feel that we shouldn't be eating, or we can't be eating, or we should be fasting. Other things that we do is we really aim for perfection, okay? So, I very much recognise that I fall into that category. I'm sure many of you do. I think it's really common in women. But that's another pattern that we've sort of established in the years when we've been sort of maybe dieting in the past. We try to be perfect and have this perfect diet and perfect, completely controlled everything. We can't sustain it for more than 2 or 3 weeks at a time if we even get that far, okay? And then what happens, we're really hard on ourselves. We feel really guilty when we can't do it. We blame ourselves. That sort of feeds into a language, defining we've got good days or we've got bad days. We think if we've eaten what's in this perfect model, we've had a good day. If we've not been able to manage it for whatever reason, we've had a bad day. Very common language to use. In fact, I try not to use that language when I'm talking to my own clients, and when I'm doing videos like this, I actually find it really hard. And sometimes I default to using that, because otherwise you sort of almost have to use that to know for people to understand what you're talking about. So really, really deeply ingrained this idea of, not eating, trying for perfection, defining our days as good or bad. One of the things as well that a lot of people think about is exercise as something that you should be doing to burn calories. And as a PT, I see that a lot. People think that they, want to see it as a weight loss tool because they want to burn calories, or they want to do more exercise so they can carry on eating and drinking as they want to. We just see, so exercise is part of that deprivation story, or offsetting the things that we're having that we're guilty about, okay? So you can see how all of these things start to sort of get sort of meshed together. And we can put huge amounts of effort into, either mental effort or physical effort into managing our diet, or being on diets, or reading about them, or exercise programs. But the only measure that we actually have, mostly, is against how heavy we are. So we can do all of these things about, what we should or shouldn't be eating, exercise, and the only measure that we're using is how heavy are we, okay? And that's not usually even enough, because that also can start to create, or very commonly, you're always trying to get somewhere or be different to how you are now, and what you look like now, and what you weigh now. And you're measuring yourself against this benchmark that may be realistic, that may not be realistic. And therefore you're not there, so you're directing negative thoughts to how you look, to what you weigh and how you look. So we're creating all this effort, we're, around what we eat, what we don't eat, how we control ourselves, how we offset the bad days, and all we're measuring it against is how fat we still are, or what our legs look like, or what our cellulite looks like. And we're negative about our own body image. So it's a really, really negative pattern and a negative cycle that we get ourselves into. And what I think here, coming into this programme, is that we want to start to change that mindset and stop thinking about food as a way of cutting calories, okay? And start to flip around to think about what we should be eating to nourish ourselves. We're going into a phase of our lives where self-care becomes important. It feels a little bit of a trite word, it's so overused, but really that's what is happening. Food is not being something that we just sort of put on the back burner or eat as little as we possibly can. We're starting to think about what do we need to do to nourish ourselves, to make ourselves feel better. Because what we eat has a very direct impact on how we feel. I don't know if you listen to any of my podcasts, and that's, I've done some coaching sessions as podcasts with just very ordinary women, just like ourselves, busy, haven't got much time to do things, making small changes to the diet. And within a couple of days, they've got more energy, they're not as hungry, so they don't have as many cravings for the things they want to avoid. Hormones start to feel balanced, sleep can improve, their mental capacity to concentrate and be productive at home and in work can start to change. And that's really, really powerful. Whereas the opposite of that, sort of the ingrained habits that we often default to, and I talk about this because I've been there, and I still have to watch it because I will go back there if I'm not careful, because it's, these are sort of habits and patterns that we've established over decades. The default that we always feel that we should be not eating. It's a badge of honour to not eat breakfast or to not really, or just have a little lunch. Or we're frightened of filling up our plates in case people think we're greedy or we've got big appetites. So this is the cutting calories thing that we default to, which is trying to not eat. That we can't exist on fresh air. Think about how much you do in a day. Think about how much work you have to do, how many things you have to sort of manage, either mentally and physically. We need fuel, and when we're trying to sort of do all these things on fumes, is it any wonder that we have really bad cravings? Is it any wonder that we can't keep our willpower going? Is it any wonder that we've got to rely on quick fixes to keep us going, and we have to pick, biscuits out of the biscuit tin, cereal bars when we're out, ready-made sandwiches, and these are all foods that are convenient that we sort of grab because we're desperate, and they're heavy in carbs and they're low in nutrients. Okay. Another pattern that I see people having all the time when they're trying not to eat all morning is they can manage to sort of go so far, but then suddenly the floodgates open and they start to eat the wrong things. Then they think, they can't control themselves, anything that just eat constantly. Get home, not hungry for dinner, but still eat the dinner, feel guilty that you've lost control of your day, go back to dieting or skipping breakfast, small lunch the next day to compensate. So you start to sort of keep this cycle going all the time of not eating. So we're not nourishing ourselves in that situation. So what this program is going to focus on is that. That's what you need to start to fix into your brain. You want to make sure that you're getting the nutrients that you need every day to thrive. What's going to make you feel full of energy, have unlimited energy all the day, not having sugar crashes, being able to concentrate on what you're doing, being able to focus, not being distracted by cravings or constantly thinking about food. That's a big one. And just finally getting off this whole dieting bandwagon that we may well have been on for years, or that we're still, even if we haven't been, long-term dieters, we're still influenced by that way of eating and that mentality. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context. Hopefully it gives you an idea about the patterns that we're trying to break and the old mindsets and the old habits. What I want to do now is talk about the things to getting started, is the things that we have to focus on to begin with to get off to a good start over this 10 weeks. All right. First one, eating 3 balanced, nutritious meals a day. All right. I'm going to say that again. We're going to eat 3 balanced and nutritious meals a day. Now, lots of my clients who've done this before almost use this as a mantra. If they don't do anything else in a day, you have to think, I just need 3 balanced nutrition meals a day. That's all I have to do. Okay, and what does that mean? That means getting enough protein with each meal. Okay, now what this means, why this is important, is a lot of us tend to undereat protein. So I talked about some of the foods that we get on the run, grabbing sandwiches or having toast, things like that, bagels, pastries and what have you. They're all very typically very low on protein. And our bodies need a certain amount of protein, and actually more than we think, and the older you get and going through menopause, when we're starting to lose muscle, protein becomes more and more important. Now, but one of the things that is really important about the protein part is that when you start to boost your protein, all the benefits that I talked about before are the things that start to happen, because protein is very filling and it's very satiating, okay, which means you feel full, it means you feel satisfied after your meals. And you're very likely not eating enough. Now, over the course of this program, I'm going to help you understand what enough is like, because that can be part of the issue. Okay, I get that I need protein, but how much is enough? That's something that we're going to cover. So don't worry too much about the details of it right this second. I just want you to understand why it's so important. Okay, so eating more protein with every meal. So that is including breakfast, that's including lunch, and that's including dinner. You want to be eating protein at every meal. Okay. You also want to be cutting down on carbs. Now, carbs and whether you should or shouldn't eat them is really controversial, and people have really strong opinions of it. Well, the reason that I am an advocate of eating fewer carbohydrates is that, one, I want you to eat more protein, because it's going to be the key thing that's going to help you manage your appetite and help you feel full, stop you having cravings, and make it easier for you to not rely on biscuits and sweets and other things like that top you up during the day. But as we get older, and particularly as we become postmenopausal, we become less able to process carbohydrates. And that means that this can be one of the reasons why, if your diet's not changed, but you start to put on weight during these middle years, one of the reasons that happens is because we're not as good at processing carbohydrates as we used to be able to when we're younger, so we start to store them more as fat. Now, fewer carbs doesn't mean no carbs, okay? I'm not an advocate of anyone cutting anything out unless they want to. You know, if you want to do keto, then that's up to you. We can talk about these on our one-to-ones. But it's better, I think, to think at this stage in time, nothing's banned. If you want some pasta with your dinner, if you want some rice with your meal, if you want a slice of toast with your eggs, fine, have it. I do. I have all of those things, but I don't have a lot, because I want to fill my plate with protein and I want to fill my stomach with protein. And the carbs are almost there for enjoyment because they've not got a lot of nutrition. You know, when we're talking about rice, pasta, potatoes, noodles, bread, they're very low on nutrients, okay? So I don't want to fill myself in with those. So it's more protein, fewer carbs. The other thing that you want to eat plenty of, though, which are carbs actually, are vegetables. So vegetables and plant-based foods. So all veg, any veg you can think of, and then things like quinoa, nuts, seeds, oats. They all come under the classification of plant-based foods. They're really important now because they help to promote a good and healthy gut microbiome, and they give us plenty of fibre, which can help with digestion. Our gut microbiome is influenced by our estrogen levels, and as our estrogen levels start to drop, that also reduces the number of good bacteria in our gut, which then tend to mean that bad bacteria can start to I can't say it, thrive and flourish. I couldn't say those two things together. And that's what starts to get your digestion out of whack. Again, it's a very common menopausal thing to start to find that you might become more bloated and maybe have issues with digestion and constipation, and that can be part of the reason. But also, it's linked to increased fat, increasing fat levels in postmenopausal women as well, because the bad bacteria can actually extract more calories from the food that you're eating. So that's why you can even not eat very much and still get heavier, because your bad bacteria are saying, oh, we'll get more out of this than we need. And it actually means that you're getting more calories out of your food than you actually need. So lots of plant-based food, lots of vegetables are really encouraged, are really good for you. They'll fill you up. They do loads of amazing things. Taste great as well. Okay. So that's the very basic structure of what those 3 balanced, nutritious meals a day. Plenty of veg and plant-based foods, more protein, less carbs. Really simple. Just healthy fat. There's no reason to fear or worry about fat. You're eating sort of small to moderate amounts of fat. It's very calorific, so it's worth not just being too liberal with things like olive oil or butter, but there's no reason to fear them. Okay. One of the things that fat does as well is help to add taste and texture to food. That's really important, because the big rule about this is that you have to enjoy everything you eat. Okay? If you don't enjoy it, you won't want to eat it again. End of story. If I eat a meal or make something that I've never made before and really don't enjoy it, I end up eating something else because I feel so cheated out of the enjoyment of a meal. I end up feeling deprived. And that's really important because, again, another menopausal thing is this sensation of feeling more deprived and not feeling like you don't really enjoy things as much as you used to, and this sort of overall happiness or joyfulness from life, or that sort of the good things don't feel as good anymore. You can sort of almost have this subdued feeling. And that's another reason why we can chase that high from, really highly processed foods like biscuits, crisps, that can really help to sort of light up our brains and give us that quick sort of happiness fix, that pleasure fix. And if we're finding that we're eating food which is bland and boring, or meals that are bland and boring, we're not going to want to eat them again. So you have to make sure that you're going to enjoy what you eat. That means that you have to be prepared to experiment, okay, and find what works for you. We're all different. Certain breakfasts, I might be able to eat something at one breakfast day in, day out for weeks on end and never get bored of it. Other people can't bear it, it just doesn't work for them. So you have to figure out what works for you, because the goal of this is to find, over the next 10 weeks, a little repertoire of recipes that works for you and your family, if you've got family that you want to cater for as well, but that can form the basis of your diet, that you're happy making, you're happy eating, that is the right level of work and effort that you're prepared to do, that you can just press on repeat and just maybe switch up now and again in as we go from winter to summer and things like that. So that's what we're going to focus on. All right, so hopefully that feels simple. Now, I want to talk about why this approach works. It balances your blood sugar, firstly. That has a huge impact because it helps to reduce hunger, and it also helps to reduce cravings. Now, it's not going to kill all the cravings. We're going to talk about that in a separate video, but that it can make a huge impact on that. What that then means in practice is it helps to stabilise your energy levels. So you're going to feel like you've got consistent energy throughout the day, and you're not having these sort of highs and then real crashes that you might have had before, where you really start to struggle. This sort of balanced blood sugar and balanced energy levels then helps you concentrate more. A lot of women recognise brain fog as quite an unpleasant symptom of menopause. It helps to reduce that. That can be a big deal, because if you've got a lot on your plate, no pun intended, struggling to sort of almost know what to do can be really hard, or feeling that you have to think harder to do your normal jobs is tough. Yeah, and if you're suddenly going to find that your brain function's improved and you can think more sharply, that's amazing. I've found as well from a lot of the people that I've done with the coaching with and on the podcast, is increasing the protein particularly can really help some people with sleep. That's a big deal, because if you start to feel like you're getting better sleep after this, then that's going to make your days a whole lot easier. Okay, and part of the reason of that is that if you're eating a very carbohydrate heavy diet and having these these sort of energy levels and crashes, not levels, sort of energy dips throughout the day, you can also have dips in the night, and your blood sugar levels can plummet in the night time, and that can be one of the reasons why people wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But then that can sort of trigger that sort of thinking and that anxiety, which sends your cortisol levels up, which makes you awake. So people who've done this, I think everyone who I've done with the podcast has found they've had better sleep, and when they have woken up, they've been able to get back to sleep quicker. So that on its own can be game changing. Okay. Now, when you also have this, you're full, you're not thinking about food, you're not having cravings, that starts to feel like your brain's actually becoming calmer. And that can be a huge thing, because people who are always hungry, and I've been one of them, and always thinking about what they want to eat, and always having that battle with themselves to not eat because they think, I can't be hungry, you become really preoccupied with food. You're trying to find something that's going to just fill this void in you that you can't quite understand. Once you start eating properly, that's gone. And that can be massive. If you think that a huge chunk of thinking and worrying and anxiety in your head just disappears, that's a big deal. And that can help people start to focus on other things in their lives. I've found people say, one of the things I've noticed, I've changed my diet and I'm having these 3 nutritious meals a day. I've started decorating, or I've suddenly realised that I've suddenly wanted to go through all the clutter in my house and sort it out. And it's quite funny when you have a conversation like that, because it's not really what you expect when you start a diet, to suddenly want to decorate or clear out your cupboards. But it does actually give you the energy and start to give you motivation, a boost to want to do these things, because you've got the mental capacity to actually do it. So when you start noticing these things that I've talked about, then you start to feel more in control of your life, of yourself. And that can help with mood, optimism, motivation. You're happier, you're brighter. It's amazing. And the really fantastic thing about this is that you can feel these benefits just within a couple of days of changing your diet, And if you think, today, tomorrow, the next day, you could be experiencing improvements in all of these areas. Imagine just what you can do with that. I mean, that just blows your mind, doesn't it? So let's get a little bit practical. So you want to, in terms of like getting started with this 3 nutritious meals a day, I just want to give you some food for thought on that as well. If you're doing coaching calls with me, then this is what we'll work on together. Right, so we'll talk about what your diet looks like now, what your normal meals are, what your lifestyle looks like. Are you cooking for a family, or can you just focus on yourself? And then we'll work on a plan of what that sort of meal structure looks like. If you're doing this on your own, then sometimes feeling that you have to change all your meals every day from tomorrow or whenever it would be can feel a little bit overwhelming, all right? So in that instance, you want to think about, well, which meals are the ones that you most fall down on? So maybe your evening meal's fine, okay? Or you have a family meal in the evening and you can't even get your head around changing that for the time being. Then it might be that you focus on your breakfast and your lunch. Or if your lunches are all right, but you're always just a bit all over the show at breakfast, start with your breakfast. So it might be that you just pick on 1 or 2 things, okay? And because one small change is fine, but pick something that's going to give you the biggest win. And I've had clients who've kept their evening meals the same, maybe just change the ratios of what they've been eating, so they have a bit more of the protein and less of the carbs. The family has what they ever had before, more of the carbs, less of the protein, whatever works for them. But they just make sure that they get a decent breakfast and lunch and keep the evening meal the same. And that can be really easy. So that's something that, you can think about. I've got a few little case studies that I've prepared for you here that I'm just going to talk through just to give you some ideas if you're doing it yourself. So I've had clients who've just had to grab toast for breakfast in the morning because they've not had enough time, and then ended up going into Tesco's and getting a meal deal or something for lunch. One of the changes that we've made there to make those sort of meals better is that you make something like a yogurt and fruit the night before, and you make extra dinner in your evening meal to take that the next day for your lunch. And they really don't take an awful lot of time. Bit of preparation, being a bit organised, yep, but that can be a game changer. A lot of people tell me that they're not hungry in the morning, or they might like doing intermittent fasting. That's absolutely fine. You eat when you're ready. So again, there's no rules here. You make your own rules. But if you don't eat your breakfast in the morning because, for whatever reason, because you're not hungry or you don't have time, make sure that whenever you do have that first meal, it's a good one. It's that one of those 3 nutritious, balanced meals a day. Because if you go out unprepared and you're at work and you suddenly get to 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock and realise you're starving, and then you grab a meal deal or a bagel or toast or whatever it is, or cheese crackers, whatever your habits are, then you're not following into that. That tends to then be the trigger then to sort of, for these other eating patterns to follow on after that I talked about earlier. So yeah, don't eat your breakfast if you don't need to, but prepare a meal for yourself so that when you're ready to eat, you've got something that fits the bill, that's got the protein in it, that's not got too many carbs, that's got plenty of, some plant-based things in there. So, and then make sure that when you have your lunch 3 or 4 hours later, or your second meal of the day, however you describe it, you're again following that template. If you're a late eater, you might find that having 2 big meals earlier on in the day mean that you're not very hungry in the evening. Fine, just make that meal smaller, okay? A big common thing here is kids or partners not eating what you want to eat. But I think I mentioned before, eat the same if that's a big deal, but just change that ratio between protein and carbs. So things that work really well are things like spaghetti bolognese and chilies and curries, all those sort of real family favourites, fajitas. You're just going to have less of the pasta, rice, tortillas, more of the chicken, the vegetables, the bolognese sauce, and just that's good enough. That's still absolutely fine. Okay, so just look for little changes that you can make, because I promise you really can do this by making it quite easy. Now then, so hopefully you've got a good idea now of why you're doing it, what the areas to focus on, these 3 nutritious meals a day are. Next stage is for you to start to try out some recipes. Okay, so I have got recipes on the site that you can use, or you can use your own, but just make those little changes that I've talked about. Key thing, just to say again, be prepared for some trial and error. All right, we're all different. Take time to figure out what works for you. That's one of the reasons I think sort of some diets fall down, is you think, you feel like you're not enjoying the food, so you failed. No, you haven't failed. You've just not found the thing that works for you. So keep going until you find the foods that work for you. That's part of this process. So we're breaking old patterns, remember. Yes, some things will work. You'll try some things and hate them. Keep going, keep experimenting. Do get some help and support from your family if you can, yeah? Because I think it's useful to explain to people in your lives that might have an influence on how you eat and when you eat and what you eat, or how much work you actually put into making sure they all get what they want. They need to understand what you need and what's going to keep you feeling good and feeling well, and what your motivations are. So we do encourage you to try and broach that with people at home. And one of the things, I'm going to do a separate video because this is long enough, just to talk about some of the things to make it happen. You will need to make some time to plan, because you're going to have to get organised. You're changing your habits at the end of the day. That takes a little bit of advanced planning. It gets easier over time, I promise you, but stepping away from the day-to-day and trying to find a little bit of time at some point during the week when you're not too stressed and do feel like you can think clearly, that's what you want to look for, to try and get yourself organised and start to do some planning around some meals and just get prepared. Okay, but I'm going to cover that in more detail in a separate video. All right then, so thank you for listening to this. Hopefully you feel fired up. Hopefully you understand what you're changing, planting a few seeds here about mindset change, but we'll dig into some of those topics in a little bit more detail in some other videos. All right then, see you soon.